Next up is our Vanguard Market Development Award, and I'd like to call up Vishaka to come to the stage. Vishaka is our 2024 Vanguard Award winner. And Vishaka will have the opportunity to present an award to Paul Hanratty, the CEO of Sanlam. Please have a seat. Paul has transformed insurance access across Africa and emerging markets through his visionary leadership and a deep commitment to financial inclusion. Under his direction, Sanlam has become one of the largest Pan-African financial services group, extending life, health, and savings products to millions previously excluded from formal insurance. Welcome. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I have the pleasure of being able to congratulate on all your behalf and on behalf of the Institute, Paul, for the award. So a formal congratulations.
Thank you very much, Vishaka.
And I really wanted to check, what makes Paul who he is?
Sure, that's a very difficult question to answer, but I guess I grew up in, I suppose, one of the poorest countries in the world, and actually one of the worst examples of how to run a country, Zimbabwe. And but my experience there was shaped fairly early on by the incredible job that the insurance industry did, in that country, and also seeing what the power of investment was into developing and building a country, notwithstanding that subsequently things have obviously not gone well.
And that's it?
I think that's it. So my beginnings are, from a very humble place. And I remember going to South Africa and to university. It was the first time I'd been to South Africa. And those of us who were from Zimbabwe all felt very inferior because South Africa is such a wealthy country. People seem to be in a different league, if I could put it that way. But it didn't take us long to realize that in many ways we were, just as capable. And I've experienced that same thing, later in life when a group of us were at I won't name the institution, but a well-known American business school. And again, we felt as people from the Commonwealth, if I could put it that way, that we were on the back foot to our American cousins. And again, within a week or two, you realize maybe not. And so I think there is an opportunity for people from the emerging markets, if I could put it that way, to make a difference. And in fact, if you look at what Silicon Valley is built on, actually there are not many Americans leading it. So I think there is hope for all of us. And we have a very poor world in the countries that you and I come from. Mm-hmm. And we can make a difference.
Thank you for that encouragement. I'm going to be probing a little more on who Paul is and not on the strategy as much. Maybe we'll come to the strategy towards the end, because in this age of Gen AI, we were just in 2 forums on resilience, innovation, and all that we could talk about was about the disruptive power of generative AI. I believe that it's far more important now for human agency to be realized. Coming from the background that you just said you did, and if you take your success till here, what seems to be is your realization of human agency. You took charge, you made decisions, you decided that you were, no worse off than your American cousins, so-called. And how do you see the demonstration of human agency?
Look, you think about our industry, I think it has the power to change lives, in a way that few other industries have. So whether you're talking about financial advisors, and I want to get hold of that paper on, is there a future for them, or we ourselves have built an AI advisor. Factually, it does a better job in terms of the advice it dispenses than the human. Whether that's going to cut it with humans or not is an entirely different issue. But I think whether you talk about the financial advisors that we've brought into our industry and changed their lives, or whether it's the lives of our customers that we've changed, whether that's through providing, pensions or, when they've had some sort of either life or property event that would have been, or their business, their factory burns down. I think we make a massive difference, but possibly the biggest difference that we make, and which I feel we don't talk nearly enough about as an industry, and I talk about it to our staff all of the time. I never ever have an engagement where I don't talk about it, is we have the most beautiful cycle of savings and investment. So we impact people way, way beyond our immediate clients. Every time we get a small amount of savings in, we're deploying that, investing, which grows economies, makes a difference to communities, and it's an incredible power that we have. And I think we make virtually no negative footprint on the planet or its resources. I mean, none of us use paper. It's a wonderful industry, and I think we do have the power to make a difference in society's lives. And I think the biggest difference is in the power of the investments that we make.
Yeah, I think that's from an industry level, right? And that's a business that we do. But if I had to kind of turn it to you as an individual and say, what are the secret power that you've used in your 40 years of WorkX? Did you ever imagine 40 years back that this is where you would be?
No, absolutely not. And I think very few of us do. And I don't want to be disparaging, but I always tell people I think it's mostly just about persistence and perseverance, and it's survival. Most people don't survive in corporations for a long period of time. And it doesn't mean you're the best or the smartest. It means you survived longer or tolerated the corporate for longer.
I think the Institute really has a lot of youngsters, and I think there are a lot of students who listen to this, and hopefully some of them will be logging in and listening to this interview. So if I had to look at it from their perspective, we're talking about Gen AI bringing in change which is rapid. I mean, we believe that what Gen AI was yesterday is not what it's going to be tomorrow, and this kind of change is unprecedented. However, I believe in our 40 years, we've seen a lot of change. I remember when I started my career, which is probably 3 years after yours, just having that machine which had numbers printed on it for us to be able to tally was innovation. We didn't have computers when we started, and I think we've adapted, we've survived. Do you see any difference in the kind of change that we've seen over the 40 years, where underwriting was so much more different then than it is now,
So,
Gen AI?
well, I always say to people, we're doing the same, we're solving the same basic problem now that we were solving 200 years ago in our industry, right? And I think that the fundamental client need is the same. We're doing it differently, but we're solving the same sets of problems. The nature of the problem does change a little bit, but it is the same basic thing. The tools that we're deploying to solve it are changing. I do have to say I often wonder whether we're really improving anything, or whether we just make the products and everything more complicated because we can. So if you look back at a lot of the products that we have today, we built them because we could, because the IT changed. I started, as you say, a bit before you maybe, but my first year at work was the arrival of the first PC and the first spreadsheets, Lotus 1, 2, 3, we're still doing pretty much the same work, but I guess maybe a little differently. But the one thing I say to people, and I think actually it's more important in the future even than now, and it may seem odd, but what young people who ask you about getting ahead, they always think of technical skills, of leadership courses at business schools, and sorry, I don't mean to knock them, they have their place. But your network and your relationships are your most important thing. I mean, I had a period where I wasn't working. I retired for 5 years. All the boards that I went onto were not through interviews or looking for the job. It was through people that you knew. When young people who work with me ask me what's the best thing you can do, I say take up golf. I've made more relationships and business playing. You can go anywhere in the world, land, go to the golf club, tell the pro I'm here by myself. He'll put you with 3 lovely people, and you're going to have 3 new friends, and some of that may turn into business. So your networks, and young people don't value that. And I think the more social media we have, it's less and less humanizing. People think you can build romantic relationships on a dating app. The reality is you need to connect with people at a level past that. And so I think the more Gen AI and all these other things we have, they will help us to do our work more efficiently. They will free up time to spend with clients and colleagues, thinking, creatively and building relationships. And at the end of the day, I can envisage a world, if you sit down with someone to talk about how we invested your pension money, I think it's great to say, we've used the whole variety of AI and other models, and, collectively, we think certain changes should be made to your portfolio. And these are the reasons that I think that makes sound sense, that human touch, the trust. This industry is built 100% on trust, 100%. And I do think that relationships and relationship skills and networking skills are things that we should be teaching people in business school, as opposed to business cases and financial ratios.
It's interesting you say that. I spent the past 1 year at Harvard. I was doing a course there, and there was an entire session of 2 hours wherein the only thing that was being discussed was, has networking become transactional, and how do we differentiate between deal friends and real friends? So I don't know if networking is not being taught. I think networking and relationships have also become a course. How do you differentiate between networking for the sake of just because I like the person? You know what you mentioned about going out to play golf, and maybe they will turn into business. But I think it's become the other way around. And how are we going to differentiate those two?
Well, I suppose we can all have opinions on that. And I mean, Andreas was talking about it earlier, how every company in the world employs the same CRM system and, does things. I don't think, to me, that's not networking. That's just managing some data. I think humans know when they feel that they trust someone, they trust their judgment, that you're putting their interests above yours. It's quite interesting. I mean, unfortunately, when you work, particularly in financial services, I think you do lose a little bit of touch with reality. You earn too much, you get paid too much, life's too easy. But I remember some years ago having forgotten about it for 20 years, is that the Institute of Actuaries, if you translate the Latin motto, was basically to put yourself in the other person's, in the customer's shoes, but with your expertise and knowledge. Now, actually, you think in business, we're taught caveat emptor, right? It's buyer beware. So long as I've disclosed everything to you, what's the issue, right? If you're not clever enough to figure out where the things are. But actually, that's a very fundamental part of our industry. If you really want people to trust us, we have expertise that they don't have, and we should be putting ourselves in their shoes. And that's what I'm talking about. And no transactional approach to life is going to solve that problem. And certainly, I know when I hire someone or want to work with someone, actually, your chemistry with them is more important than. They can't be incompetent, but we've all worked with extremely clever people who can't create value, right? And so that ability to work with other people, to collaborate, is very important.
I think that's a beautiful segue. I loved the two things that you said. Humans know, and that chemistry is important. And I wonder very often that with Gen AI coming in, and with everything being outsourced to Gen AI, how are we ever going to be able to capture that humans know? You know, where's that going to get captured in the development of Gen AI? But I think I've taken up enough of your thoughts on that, unless you want to respond to that.
No, I say to all my colleagues and my children, I'm very happy that I'm at this end of my career and not at the other end.
Yeah, I mean, I
The
worry.
same could be said of dating apps. I'm very happy that I'm at this end.
And I worry that, at least my experience with a lot of the youngsters has been that they prefer texting over calling. They prefer having, even calls are without the video on. And there's so much more. And I wonder, I said, when are you going to be able to differentiate between AI bot responding to you and a human responding to you? You know, if you're not going to have what you just said about humans know, chemistry is important. Both of these, humans know and chemistry is important, are irrelevant in a Gen AI world. So I wonder how we're going to keep that alive. But having said which, let me move a little more to seeing if I can challenge you to quantify relationships. I'm putting on the hat of my 30-year-old who says, what are relationships in a transactional world? Everything is on the basis of productivity. I deliver, I have a job. I don't deliver, I don't have a job. So how do you expect me to build long-term relationships, and why would it matter in a transactional world where productivity is the only metric?
Yeah, look, it's a very difficult question to answer, but I truly don't believe that our industry is just a transactional world at all. And I can come up with a variety of examples to demonstrate that. But let me tell you a small example, and maybe it's trivial. But in our business, before I joined it in 2020, we had launched a digital life insurance business, and the age-old problem of channel conflict had been alive and well. So the company was launched under its own standalone brand, and it got some customers, but not very many, right? And the J curve just got bigger and bigger. And so we just changed one thing. We just changed the brand name to Sanlam, and everything changed, right? So what is that? That's a relationship of trust. Now, that's not what you're talking about, human to human. But how did that relationship build up over time? It wasn't just some white hands holding a ball or whatever it is and some blue. It's actually the interaction that people have had over a century with the people that work for us that have collectively created some brand equity, right? So that's the very tangible thing we do. I mean, for a fact, I think our biggest Achilles heel in our industry is the cost of distribution. That is the thing. If you ask anybody in this room, I guarantee you, if we could get all our customers to come flocking to us, we've got great products. They just don't come to us. If only they would just come to us, we would. But so we spend a fortune on distribution. If it were that easy, people would have just created digital insurers everywhere. Why doesn't it work? Because you have to spend an arm and a leg and a fortune to get the brand to the scale where it can substitute for the relationship. Yeah. So, and obviously, if you get into motor insurance, it's much easier. But the more complex the products are, and the more that you need to put your trust in the advice and the judgment, I think it's to me quite clear that there is a value, and you can measure it in different ways. You can measure brand equity or whatever, but the fact is that's relationship.
Yeah, and probably if you turn that around into the brand as the individual, And it's about thinking, the individual thinking about themselves as a brand. Probably everything that you said would apply.
I think everybody who works for us, for any one of our companies, is your brand ambassador, right? Every time they don't fulfill a promise of "I'll get back to you," is a chip away at the trust in your brand.
True, very true. So this is the Vanguard Market Development Award, and from personal experience, I know that dealing with the micro segment is one of the most difficult challenges, and you've done a fantastic job of it because the margins are thin, the price is very small. It's how do you balance commercial sustainability and social impact when you're doing this?
We're only interested in one thing in our company, and that's making money and creating value for shareholders. So we never do anything other than through our foundation for impact. So for us, it's much more a question of figuring out what is the model. So let me give you it's a small example, but it's an example that I like. So many of you may or may not know that in South Africa we have a national park called the Kruger National Park. It's a very vast area. It's bigger than Britain. And it's a very ecologically important area. We have 2 to 3 million people living around that park who live below the poverty line. So if you think about 2 to 3 million people living around a national park with who below the poverty line, the temptation would be to strip the resources of that. And that would actually impact everybody, even people living on the other side of the world, because actually people go on and on about net zero, but if you degrade your ecological resources, actually that probably has a bigger impact than throwing a bit of smoke out of a diesel truck. So it's super important that we preserve our natural ecological resources, the animals, the environment. So what we've done, if we try to sell insurance or savings products to those people, I mean, you would get nowhere, right? So what have we done? We've started lending them money. We don't actually give them the money up front, but we've actually connected them to becoming suppliers to all the lodges, right? So they start building a business, and we finance that. And so those people are now becoming economically active, and now on the back of that, we're starting to sell them insurance. So the first thing was to make people economically active and productive. It happens to have a big impact on the environment, and the insurance is the last step in the chain. So you need to think about it that way. The other thing we've done, we had a very ambitious experiment, ongoing experiment, with Africa's largest telco provider, a cell phone company. I was on the board of that. I had to come off because of some conflicts. 240 million subscribers across Africa. So we thought, well, how do we get insurance digitally? If we had the initial CEO present to you, would have been blown away by the innovation. The problem is, the more innovation we had, the more money we lost, because we also had all of our costs in rands, and we were collecting premiums in currencies that continue to depreciate against us. And we've had, when you talk about currency depreciation, something like the Naira and the Egyptian pound have lost 75% of their value against the South African currency. So if your cost base is so we've actually had to re-engineer that entire business, both the IT stack and the people and the products, and pull it right back. And now we're making money. And once we have the confidence of making money, we'll grow the business. We started too ambitious. And too much innovation and absolutely minute premiums. So this is the challenge, is to make the thing make money. Because if it doesn't make money, it's not sustainable. Yeah. It's not sustainable for the clients, and it's not sustainable for shareholders.
No, that makes complete sense. And while you did say making money and value for shareholders, I think at the end of the day, you did start with how we're going to make it beneficial for the customers too. I think that's...
Well, you're never going to make money for shareholders if you're not making it good for customers.
Exactly.
So any business to thrive must have a great product, which actually in our industry means trust. So that means when the customer puts their head on the pillow at night, they don't have to understand the mechanics of it, but they must know that no matter what happens, you'll be there if there's a claim, which means your solvency is rock solid. So it does start with the customer, and if you're not winning for the customer, you're not going to be winning in the long run for the shareholder. You can drive short-term profits, sure, but you'll fall over the edge at some point. So it has to be, everything has to be commercially viable. It has to be, I believe.
No, thank you so much. I think we're running out of time. There are plenty of questions I can continue to ask you. But I think the theme for me, the takeaway has been trust and human instinct, and I think that's what we're going to look forward. So join me in thanking him and congratulating him once more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
It's a pleasure.